I just want to say thank you everyone for coming today. I know it's quite a rainy day, so thank you for spending your Saturday coming to our event. I'll be giving a talk today about something slightly different, so sort of keeping Aroids outside in Sydney, which some people do, but probably not to the extent that I do. And most people keep their Aroids, I guess, indoors or in tents or in a greenhouse or something like that. But I really wanted to try and experiment with sort of keeping Aroids outdoors and seeing what you could achieve in a sort of subtropical climate. So obviously Aroids are generally tropical plants, but sort of getting them to adapt to an environment that's sort of a little bit suboptimal, but actually they do quite well. This is me and our house. I live in the inner city of Sydney, and that's kind of my Aroid garden that I've created for myself. That's my dog, well, one of my dogs anyway. So who am I? I am your New South Wales ASA representative. So any questions about ASA, you can direct them to me. Obviously ASA are part of a bigger society all around Australia, so we have events statewide, so Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, etc. For those of you who have been part of ASA for a while, last year we brought out Tom Crow to basically do a tour of Australia. So I'm just a passionate gardener, I guess. So I've been gardening my whole life, and probably started off with like your more sort of traditional, what I was looking at for like English garden plants. So I love like azaleas and like daffodils, jonquils, magnolias, camellias, those type of plants. And then we moved to the inner city, where there wasn't really much space, so then I kind of then got into Aroids sort of around 2019, just before COVID, and then COVID, I guess, kind of like everyone, just exploded my interest in Aroids, and I guess growing things in a more indoor environment where we didn't really have that much outdoor space, which is kind of ironic because I ended up putting them outside anyway. But that's me in my garden, and that's Alocasia or Watsoniana. I guess the Australian form or the longer lober form. It actually doesn't do too badly outside. They're my two dogs and my friend's dog, so that's Cooper. So they live with me and my partner, and that's just an example of what I've been able to grow outside in my garden. I'm a medical practitioner by trade, but plants are just my hobby, which has kind of also taken over another part of my life, but I find it really enjoyable. So it's kind of a space that I go to where I can kind of forget about work and kind of just enjoy watching the plants grow and what I can do with them. So I know this is kind of a little bit basic, but this is a joint space today, so we have some visitors from the Burwood area who are not part of ASA. So I'll just quickly go over what is an Aroid. So basically Aroid is a colloquial term for any plants in the Ariaceae family. They are defined by their flowers, or basically they have an inflorescence, which is this thing here, which is a group of flowers which are on a spadix. They are covered by a modified leaf called a spathe, which is this red thing here. I guess the typical Aroid flower that you see is probably like a peace lily, which has the typical spadix and then the white spathe around it. There's many genuses or genera, so Philodendron, Monstera, Spathiphyllum, Alocasia, Syngonium, Bupremnum. Generally found all over the world, generally on the forest floor, but they do like to climb. So you'll probably find them climbing up trees and whatnot, but they sort of are found mainly on the forest floor. So this is me. This is when we moved into our house. So this is how it started. It's very basic. So this was back in, oh sorry, that didn't work. That's 2021. 2017, sorry, that didn't turn out as how I thought. Okay, so that's September 2017 when we just moved into our inner city terrace, and that's how it's going now. Which, yeah, kind of is a funny expression of my gardening, but anyway. And that was February 2024. So that's probably when the garden was doing its best. It's kind of now winter, so some things have died back, but that's kind of, I guess, how it all began. I think when you're trying to grow aroids outside, it's probably about finding the right plant for the right space. So this is a philodendron Jose Bueno, which is pretty much at maturity now. It's been outside for about 3 or 4 years, and when it's outside like that, it just has so much. It just looks so much different to what you would normally see. The intern space is quite short, the leaves are quite large, it has this really beautiful paddle shape to it, and some quite nice variegation. You can kind of see like it's outside, so you've got some weather damage and whatnot, but it's actually doing pretty well. I find, I'll just talk about philodendrons first. So I find that the arubescens type philodendrons probably do best outside. They have more matte leaves, they're not velvet, and they can kind of tolerate a lot of the extreme low temperatures. So it's not so much about the warm temperatures, it's more about the low temperatures. So probably at night gets to about, in the middle of winter, probably as low as 2 degrees, and that's probably as low as they probably can tolerate. So it's mainly July that I worry about. I've been keeping them outside for a while. That's, if you have a lot of very, very cold nights that go below 2, I find what happens first is that the tip starts to rot, and then the plant can rot very fast. So you could rot within like 1 or 2 days, and then you lose a whole plant. So what I found was putting them outside a little bit larger, putting them on a pole, trying to get them established first, and not putting them out in the winter to start with. So put them out in spring, let them acclimate through spring, summer and autumn, and hopefully they've grown quite a fair bit, and then you just kind of hope that they will do okay in winter. So rubescens types would be things like your Jose Bueno, your pink princess, your white princess, domesticum, red wings. I'm sure there are more, but those type of plants. Anyway, so that was the beginning. I had some plants outside already because I was kind of just putting them there to see what might work. And actually, they'd been there for about a year before I started to really modify this space. And I basically started with philodendrons first. And I think the thing about the space is because it was a concreted garden, it holds a lot of the heat, and because it's protected by a lot of the other housing around it, it kind of created this quite unique microclimate. And then clumping all the plants together also helps sort of protect them from the extremes, like the extreme cold and wind, and then bumped up the humidity just a little bit. So that was December 2021. So I started off with this wall, and I thought this would be a great place to just experiment and maybe just chuck some plants outside and see what would work. So I first started with just, so I built all those poles myself, bought the plastic, bought the wire, wired it all together, drilled nails into the fence, and then hung the poles up like a painting. So you can take them on and off the fence basically. And I knew there were some plants that were already doing well outside that could tolerate the cold quite well. So I think I started off with putting my Ilmenii outside. So that was the first plant I put outside because they're generally colder growing. People in far north Queensland say that they're a little bit harder to grow because they don't like the heat too much. So I thought that would be a good plant to start with. And then this was kind of an experiment back then. So then I put, that one's a Florida Beauty. So I chucked the Florida Beauty outside as well. And then I basically then filled all the empty spaces. So that was, sorry. This is still, I think this is now January 2022. So that was a sort of a semi-reverted pink princess, but I kind of liked the colours of it, so I kept it there. Then I put a rugosum, and then I put a variegated domesticum, and that one is a white princess, so you can't really see it very well. And then I added a few more. So that was the Jose Bueno, and then right at the end was a Glorious, which is a hybrid of Gloriosum and Melanochrysum. So that kind of how it all started. That was the sort of start of experimenting with growing things outside. And then you can kind of see down here there's some other Aroids as well. I've got a Monstera, there's some Syngoniums, they're colocasias, that's a variegated Monstera, and there's like a water pot down here where the colocasias grow. So June 2022, started to grow really well. So this is in winter now, and they had just come out of obviously autumn. Autumn is a pretty good time for the plants. It starts to cool down, and actually I find they grow a little bit more. And they actually weren't doing that badly. So, and then February 2023, everything is starting to look pretty good. So you can kind of see they're sort of growing up the poles, and they were actually doing really well at this point. The plants that I found actually did the best were the Eumannii, the Jose Bueno, and interestingly the Rugosum. The Rugosum is a high altitude plant, so it actually tolerated the cold pretty well. February 2024, and the Monsteras that was a bit of an accident, they had attached themselves independently without a pole to the fence. I kind of just ran with it, and they kind of just extended themselves all the way up. I think the important thing is, what I did was look around to see what was growing around my area, and I just kind of took some inspiration about what I thought might be able to grow outside. Obviously, a lot of Monsteras are fine. They don't really seem to bother too much with the cold. And then again, the sort of thicker mat-leaved philodendrons. But I was quite surprised that the Rugosum did quite well. It actually probably did better outside than I had in my. I have a little enclosed balcony space, and it did better outside once I put it there than it was doing inside. I'm not sure if it really liked the heat too much. And you can kind of see the colocasias are also doing really, really well, which quite surprised me because I bought most of my colocasias from plant growers in Queensland, and none of them went dormant in winter. They've been growing for a number of years, and they did better than I actually expected. So this was taken last week. That's kind of how things are going now. The Thai constellation's really kind of taken over, and it kind of really does form quite a nice mid-level plant, I guess, sort of overhangs the colocasias, and the rest is sort of growing up the poles down. Just going to let them grow up into maturity. So basically what I wanted to say was, growing outside is not difficult. Probably best to start with a plant that's already semi-mature, put it on a pole where it can root into something, and then protect it in a space. So you don't want to have it, say, in the middle of your garden where it's exposed to the cold and the wind. You want to put it up against the wall, protect it. The space that I have actually doesn't really get any full sun, so it's kind of, the fence protects the plants and they get a lot of ambient light but not direct sunlight, so I think that's why they were doing so well. The beauty about them is I don't water them that much either. They get a lot of rainwater, and I just sit there with the hose and I just go like that, which is actually great for me because it's very low maintenance and they do really well. That's my Florida beauty. It doesn't really love the cold. The tip rots every year. I'm hoping this year the tip won't rot because it's supposed to be a warm winter, but it seems to bounce back in spring, which is good. But I think it looks great outside. So these are my, that was supposed to, that form didn't format quite well. So these are just my experiments of what I found can grow outside pretty well. So Jose Bueno does pretty well. Rugosum, like I said, does pretty well. These are all my photos, except some. That's my Eumannii that actually flowered. I tried to pollinate it, didn't work. But I tried to put Jose Bueno pollen on it, didn't work. But but that's my Eumannii, which actually I think is a great plant for Sydney. I've chucked it all over my garden. It just grows like a weed. So if you have a plant like that, it actually does fine outside. But I wouldn't put it outside when it's a small plant. I put it outside when it's a big plant. Glorious. I think I took that yesterday. That's my pink princess before it reverted. That's my white princess. I took that this morning. You can kind of see, like, obviously the rain and being outside kind of does damage some of the variegation. That's my domestica. Again, my Florida beauty. I did have a good photo of my beauty queen, but I had a photo of it for her, so I thought that was quite nice. Again, that's another Aroids type philodendron. I did have a photo of red wings, but it grows next door. But anyway, that's my Manning again. And that's Rojo Congo. But again, you kind of see these plants a lot in gardens around Sydney, so that's kind of where I got my inspiration for that. It was supposed to be variegated, but it was. These ones do not grow outside, so I've tried, and it didn't work. I tried with a normal one, not a variegated one, but I just thought, like, I put it there. I do have a variegated one, but it's inside. So I've tried Bilietier twice, didn't work, so don't do that. Paraiso Verde, it probably would do okay if it was bigger, but I had one and it rotted twice, so it's probably one of those on the fence philodendrons that you probably can't really grow. Clymen and I did not like the cold at all, so don't try that. By the way, these aren't my photos because obviously they don't grow outside, so they do. Ring of Fire, I've tried about 3 times to grow this outside, so again, it gets to about mid-July and then it just rots really fast, so that was kind of a fail, but it's just good to know. And Belmark did not like the cold as well. And I think other ones that probably wouldn't like the cold would be like Melanochrysum and any of your extremely corrugated philodendrons or any of your very, very velvet philodendrons. But anyway, I tried those. Ones that I thought that I didn't expect to do really well were the colocasias. And if you like growing these sort of elephant leaf plants, I really love them. They grow really fast. And there's lots of different colours and lots of different hybrids that are being produced now even in Australia. So that Mojito surprisingly does really well outside. Black Magic, which is there. And then the Midori Sour here, that does really well. Lemon Lime is back there. Pharaoh's Mask is here, and that one is the Milky Way. So I'd 100% recommend growing colocasias outside. Some of the Facebook groups that you read say that, well, they're basically based in Queensland and they don't know how they do in Sydney, but I found that they're absolutely great. And that's one Gecko as well. And there's a few more colocasias I want to get, but my space doesn't really allow, but we'll see. Monsteras do really well, so 100% trying to grow your Monstera outside, probably does better outside than it would inside. That's my Thai constellation. That's my Monstera Aurea when it was small. And then that was a Borsolgiana. Caladiums do work well outside, but again, not in winter. So if you really want to winter caladiums, you should probably take them indoors, because if they get to about 10 degrees, even if they're dry outside, I found that the bulbs tend to rot. But they do great in spring and summer. Some of them do tolerate a bit colder, but I don't like to risk it because I never know what they look like, and then I lose them and then I can't remember what I've got. So, but caladiums do quite well. That's another caladium I have. Alocasia, that's a Brisbanensis, sorry. That's native to Brisbane. So that does okay. I've got one growing in my front garden now. The best part about alocasias is that they like to be pot bound, they don't need a lot of soil, and they can grow really big. So, Cucullata is another one. That one's variegated, but Cucullata does pretty well. I've seen a lot of them. There's actually a garden in Broadway that I've seen a lot of them do really well in, and another garden in Newtown. So if you want an alocasia that grows outside, you can try those two. Alocasia in general do not like to be cold. So, and they don't really like to, if they go dormant, that's not a good sign either. So those two I found do okay outside. Watsoniana, that's borderline. It's gone dormant again this winter, so I don't recommend it, but it grew like that outside, so I was quite happy. Just really quickly, Syngoniums, pretty much all your Syngoniums will grow outside. Haven't had any trouble. They do go a bit funny in winter, but other than that, they tend to bounce back. And then Anthuriums, pretty much or your matte-leafed anthuriums, but again, it's a bit tricky. I've been able to grow Andrianum pretty well. I've seen hookery in the Botanic Gardens, and I think they have a polydactyl, but apart from that, I wouldn't put any velvet anthuriums outside, and you're pretty limited with what you can grow. But if you like Andrianums, you can grow them pretty well. They do fantastic. So I just want to wrap up by just saying that if you want to grow Aroids outside, be a little bit brave. Choose a plant that's not expensive, choose something that you have multiples of, pick a plant that's in semi-maturity and clump them together and see what you can achieve. And don't be too scared if it dies, but be brave. See what's growing around you locally and try to emulate that, because that's probably the best, that will give you the best insight to what you think might be able to grow in your own garden. Plants are adaptable. I'm very surprised at what I've been able to achieve, and hopefully you have some new inspiration. So, any questions?
Me? Okay. Sorry. So, put it outside means it will be exposed to heat waves. Sometimes we got that. Your plants survive all of them?
Yeah, so they're exposed to all the... I mainly worry about the cold. The heat I don't tend to worry about too much because they're not exposed to the direct sun. Yeah, and they're mainly tropical plants anyway, so the heat, when it's warm, they tend to grow a little bit better. Obviously you need to water them a bit more. It's more the cold. The thing they have to worry about is the drop in temperature. That's what I sort of worry about. But my garden's doing okay now, but it's sort of coming into winter. But yeah, so just make sure you water it enough. Yeah, and the media that they're in is more like an Aroid mix. So it's got cocoa chip, bark, perlite. So it's free draining. So you don't want it to hold too much moisture. You want it to be able to drain out, and they do okay. Yes.
A watering question. So what is your watering regime, and how does it differ from winter, summer,
yeah, so,
with the rain?
Yeah, so in winter, like it's raining today, and it's exposed to the sky, so I just let the rain water them. But that's going back to what I just said, the free draining mix is really important because you don't want the mix to hold on to too much moisture, especially in winter, where if it gets too cold, the roots will then start to rot. So because the mix is so airy, it doesn't hold too much moisture, so it just drains out. Obviously in summer I have to water it quite a fair bit, but the beauty of it being outside is I can just stand there with the hose and I don't care where the water goes, whereas if I'm watering indoors, you have to be so mindful about water, draining out. So in summer I can just stand there with the hose and let it really soak. And actually when I put them outside, we were going through La Nina, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But yeah, that's what I would say. In winter, just water them a lot less, and in summer, you just have to keep up with the watering.
The collocations of that, do you dry them out over winter?
No, they stay in the water. So,
really?
Yeah,
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, they stay in the water. Yeah, so I keep them because I keep some fish, and the fish live in the bottom. So I keep the collocations in a water vessel, and then they've got fish in there, and then the collocations just stay in there all year round. I don't touch them. And I just give them a bit of fertilizer in spring, and I'm very surprised that they didn't go dormant.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was my next question. What are you using as fertilizer?
So what I do is there's like the little clay discs that you can buy off eBay, and then they're kind of
slow release.
Yeah. So I think you can make them yourself, but basically I think they're just blood and bone and dynamic lifter heated in like a little clay disc. And then you just push it into the soil, and it doesn't disintegrate. Yeah, and collocations are very big feeders, so I normally put like 3 or 4 in them, and I shove them into the soil, and then you don't have to do anything. And they're not expensive; they come as like these little, I was thinking about making them myself. I was like, oh, you can just buy them off eBay. So and
so what about the filter and your anthuriums and all that sort of stuff? Do you use the same?
Oh, I don't actually license that much, but if I do, I normally just get like I have a worm farm, so I just use like the worm wee, I guess, and I just put them in a watering can, and I just water them like that. Yeah. But sometimes like with these, I do put some dynamic lifter right at the bottom, and sometimes into the pole itself, and I just let it go through. But I would only do that in the warmer months. But I wouldn't feed them now,
Yeah.
and I'd probably feed them in spring and feed them in summer, and then in autumn I won't feed them again. So
Thank you.
that's right. Any other questions?